Well, on the topic of segments, we're going to watch the Rearview presented by BF Goodrich, and we're going to check out Julian Wilson battle the then rookie Italo Ferreira in the quarterfinals of the 2015 Fiji Pro. As always, the Rearview is sponsored by BF Goodrich Tires. BF Goodrich is celebrating 150 years in 2020, and they're celebrating in part by sponsoring the lineup, which is a great choice. If you want to wish BF Goodrich a happy 150th anniversary, you can tag at BF Goodrich Tires and use the hashtag BFG and WSL. Tag us and let us know what Rearview segments you'd like to see in the future. Okay, here we go. All right, so the scene set here, this is the 5th of 11 events in 2015. This is the quarterfinals, and we got Julian in his 5th year on tour against the reigning world champ, Italo Ferreira, who was only a rookie back in 2015. Have you been to Fiji much, Taylor?
Yeah, I've been there a bunch of times with Kelly. He always wants to go there to shoot stuff. So yeah, I've been there a bunch.
Are you goofy footer or regular footer?
I'm a regular foot, but I do know this angle, and usually it smells really bad with all the seagulls that are sitting up on that tower, and it's hard to get to.
I remember, I was there, and it was Italo's first year. It was his first time ever there, and it was one of those really big years. And I think the days leading up to this final, they were really big, and he was doing these like suicide floaters over shish kebabs. And I remember he did really well. He didn't get through this heat, but we were at the airport later on. I was with Blair Marlin and Dane, and we were having a pizza, and we invited Italo over, and we were talking to him. And his English wasn't as good as it is now, but he was still fine to talk to. And we were like, "Wow, you did so well! Like, congratulations! Those floaters and like turns over shish kebabs are crazy." And we're like, "How many times have you been here?" And he's like, "This is my first time." Like, it just kind of was one of those guys. He didn't know.
Yeah. Didn't he beat Kelly in this one?
I think he did. I think he beat Kelly before, yeah. Yeah,
that's impressive out here. Yeah, he's a crazy free surfer. I wonder if he I haven't seen a lot of his free surfs except for the stuff he's put up, but I wonder if he pushes it as hard as he does in contests. I don't know if he wants to risk getting hurt and pushing it that hard.
Yeah, some guys, it's almost like they push it up until they do get hurt, and then the second they're out of the water for like 4 to 6 months, they're like, I got to be careful, kind of thing. But I don't know. I mean, I keep seeing. I mean, he put the air out on Instagram the other day that was like a legit 10-foot air on like a 4-foot wave or something.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, what year is this?
So this is 2015, and I was going to ask you because you do have such an eye for high performance talent. Like, is there anything that you can see in surfers early on where you're like, that's going to be someone special?
Yeah, I really look for style. Like style, I think is the important thing that translates for me. Then it's like what kind of pop they have when they go off the lip. But it's the style first because I really tried to promote linking of maneuvers and not just doing one maneuvers. And so that if it's just one maneuver, you cut it pretty quick and not really see someone's style. But if you're linking multiple maneuvers, then you'll see their flaws in their style if they have them.
And Italo, I mean, all the pundits always kind of commented on his style in particular because a lot of surfers will either be back foot or front foot. And everyone that I kind of listen to is like, he's very, very like balanced between both feet, which does look different in a lot of ways. But like you can kind of tell here, he's worked on a lot of stuff, obviously in the last 5 years, but he just has so much speed and the lines he's drawing are a little bit unique that you can kind of tell that he's got something.
Yeah, I would say like he does a lot of setup for when his big moves. So that would probably be something that I would tighten up in the edit. I would keep it closer to that. But when he's on backside, he doesn't have any kinks in it. It goes top to bottom to top. And so I'm just thinking of Bells in particular, the year that he won. He was really, really teed in that year, and Kramis that same year. So yeah, I think for me, it's the transition stuff that I really watch for to make sure it's a good section.
And you've worked with Julian a lot too. Can you kind of compare and contrast those styles from a filmmaker's perspective?
I would say like style wise, Julian's also worked on his style a lot. In the earlier days, he had a little bit of a squattier style, and and it's really smoothed out as he's progressed. But yeah, they both have that thing where you don't know what they're going to do off the lip. You can't really tell how much pop they're going to get. I constantly get surprised when I was filming with Julian by where I think he'd go and how much higher he would actually go. But as far as styles, it's harder to compare it here at Fiji. I think Fiji's a tougher wave to get clips. It's just there's a middle part of it that's a little bit hard to really make it a keeper.
Well, it's a good point. It feels like unless it's almost like one of those really groomed long right hand points, like a J-Bay or something. It's really rare, I feel like, to see complete rides in film these days, in free surfing films. As you pointed out, there's a lot of those, what's the biggest maneuver you can do on the wave, and we can cut that really quick. But as you were saying, you like to promote kind of combination of maneuvers. I feel like Fiji, I've seen a few of those, whether it's been Parker Coffin, likes to line up those combinations. But as you're saying, it's really only 2 moves max. It's not like a huge set of moves.
Yeah, Andy would get clips out here. He was usually really good at getting clips here, but for the most part, there's either a dead spot or a long barrel, but the barrel's not crazy enough. It's not like a pipe barrel or chopes, and it's not that dramatic. So you want somebody that's really attacking the lip on it, and there's just a weird flat spot on it at most times that sort of kill those multiple combos.
Why do you think Kelly likes to film here? I know why he likes to go there, but
he's gotten it good so many times. For me, I try to go to different locations so that it's fresh when you see their sections, but he likes to just try to get it better and better. I usually try to steer him away from going here, but I think he just loves the whole experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
How does restaurants compare from a filmmaker standpoint in terms of getting high performance surfing compared to Cloudbreak for you?
I think restaurants is probably better for clips, when it's bigger, because they could really, if they're turning. So I try to push not just to be a barrel hound, but to really sort of do turns in between those barrels.
Right. There's that flat section you were talking about between that big opening swoop and the barrel.
Yeah. And just sort of the barrel, that was a great barrel for a contest, but it wouldn't have been great for a video section. So it's just a little bit in that real close, but not there.
When you go on trips, whether it's to Tavor or somewhere else, do you get to bake in a bit of water time for yourself?
Yeah, there's always time. Boat trips were usually the best for that, but I would usually get sunstroke because I would surf in between every
sure.
every session. So there's always bake time in there. That section right before this barrel is the one that I'm talking about. That's really hard to do something progressive. And so if you could get a little barrel, do a big turn, and then get barreled again, then that's a keeper. But it's really tough to do that.
What do you think it was? You mentioned Andy was really successful at getting clips out at Cloudbreak. What was it about his approach that lent itself to that kind of wave?
I think he just approached the barrel section as a turning section a lot of times, and would come up and attack that section and then sort of fall into the barrel. And so, he just approached really steep sections almost where he would throw his board up there and then figure out how to get out of it. And, he just was that comfortable that he'd do. But he would just attack the barrel section.
I think both of these guys, I know Julian's on a quad. It looks like Italo's on a quad too. For I guess I'll start with the hi-fi stuff. Do guys ride varied equipment that much for if they're trying to bag hi-fi surfing clips for you?
Sort of when quads just came out, there's a little bit of a time where people are doing that, but for the most part, it stretches the turn out a little bit too long on their carves. We would shoot all day, and if we got a clip, that was a good day. And so when you go on a trip to Bali or even Fiji for a week, you're trying to get five keepers. Right. So you don't need your board to be flowing through everything. You just need it to flow on one wave and the right wave for it. So generally, tri-fins are the ones for those kind of waves.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things I like to talk to the men and women on the CT a lot, just in terms of equipment experimentation, because they're very hesitant to, even if we're just warming up, they're like, no, I'm riding like my Ferrari board because I want to be comfortable on it. And then guys like Kelly, kind of were, and Dane, I guess to a degree, were kind of the only ones that experimented with different kind of boards and tails and in competition. I was wondering if that ever transferred over or translated over to when you were filming with them for free surf videos.
Not in that, like more in the travelogue ones, and when
Right.
they sort of went that way, but not in the high performance stages. Those boards were just like those Ferraris. And the guys were riding those other boards when it was average and we weren't really filming. But when it was like film time, it was go as fast as you can and turn as hard as you can and just hope for the best.
And you mentioned filming, whether I think it was proximity or sipping jet streams, it might have been both, with Dave Rostovich. And he's a guy that is really sort of popularized high performance surfing on alternative craft. From a filmmaker standpoint, like what are you looking for when you go film with someone like Dave Rostovich?
Dave's got, well, for one, style's like so huge. He's got that Tom Curran style. But he's just got that X factor. It's weird. He's sort of like one of those guys that he could handle going at code red, catching waves there, to waves equivalent of J Bay, and just really connecting the lines on them. I would use him in some of those performance films that you were talking about, but they were more barrel based and just carbs, but it seemed to fit for me because he was pushing the limits on that side. But yeah, he's his style and just his lines he draws is really fun. And I've asked about riding a tri-fin, and he says his body's too stiff, and so he needs that twin fin to help loosen him up. And but I don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that I think he beat Parco at like the Billabong Junior Series Championship at Burley. Like, he was just one of those guys that was so talented when they were young too, and he kind of just went his own route. I'm sure he could ride a tri-fin just fine. I think that was actually one of the first times we talked was that Code Red swell we were filming for, because I was quote unquote running the marina and the boats for the event that day, and you're like, we'd like to go to a boat, and I'm like, yep, go on. no problem.
It was hectic that day. Yeah,
it was psycho. Yeah, it was. I remember like the gendarme came, they shut the marina. It was a whole thing. But I mean, you mentioned outside of the Code Red kind of like Frankenstein swells, like what do you like about filming in Tahiti? Essentially, we were talking about this the other week with Tatiana Weston Webb and Tyler and Carolyn about how ultimately it's a very fundamentals based wave, in the sense of you line it up, you set your line, you knife the drop, and you're good to go kind of thing. But from a filmmaking perspective, what do you like about Tahiti compared to Fiji?
Yeah, I would say Fiji's probably easier to film. Fiji's got that tower and you can get multiple angles. I would say Tahiti's a little tough because you have that one angle for the most part. But what's nice about it is the way that it gets a little bit more freakish, and so a lot more freakish. And but I needed to be that sort of freakish, or starting to be, like that heavy level to be usable. If the barrel looks too easy, then it doesn't have that shock value when you watch a video.
Totally. And you mentioned you spent a bit of time in New York. You're from Solana Beach, but I think you've also spent time like residing in I think Byron and Bali. Is that accurate? Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about why you chose to live in different spaces and what that was like for your creative process? Yeah,
like traveling and making these films for all the 90s, I just sort of got used to a gypsy lifestyle. And so when my wife got pregnant, we decided to keep that lifestyle but be a little bit more responsible. And so we decided to move every 6 years to a new country. And we picked Bali as the first place. And it wasn't intentional, but then all of a sudden everybody started filming in Bali. I don't like to film where I live because then I don't get to surf as much. But that became a spot that all the brands started sending guys to get clips. And then I moved to Byron from there, and then New York from there. Cool. So are you still on the 6-year program, or? I'm sort of, it's now a little bit, my kids are older, so it was easy with schooling to have it be that, right before first grade, right before seventh grade, were natural sort of breaks. But I still romanticize on doing another big move. And Portugal is probably on my short list.
Yeah, Portugal's rad. With where you ended up, and I know we've talked about diversifying how you're expressing surfing, whether it's with Dave or Steph or someone like that. But when we're just talking about how you classify like top tier high performance surfing, for you, where do you kind of rank, or how do you rank, or how do you kind of harmonize like rail turns versus airs versus like fin free maneuvers in terms of your hierarchy on filmmaking?
Well, those big maneuvers are always important, but like our whole thing was like combos. We would say combos before, I'll just constantly like put that in everybody's heads. Like, let's get a combo, whether it's two progressive, like airs or a carve and then an air, whatever it is, like, let's make it multiple turns. I think, me and Kelly romanticized about like having his whole section be paddle, take off to kick out every wave. And so like all of its keepers be like really complete waves. That ended up not really happening as he got other keepers. But the idea of that, it was in our ethos of like really like not just cheating it, and not just like sort of just showing it right before, like even mid face to air, but showing a little bit of the technique so kids at home or adults at home could watch it and sort of learn some of their setup to that air or setup to that maneuver. And I like the idea back, especially during the 90s, of having it as almost a way to sort of like learn how to improve your own surfing.
We've been doing a lot of stuff on the WSL site with like these old clips, like whether with the vault, and we're playing like, here's the 2005 Tahiti event, and we'll watch it. And it's so fascinating because like there's so many nines that get thrown for barrels that would probably be, 15 years later, like a 4 or 5 or something. Yeah. And just like the learning curve and how good everyone's gotten at everything in surfing. Do you ever sit back and kind of, with your oeuvre of films, like from the start to where surfing is now, and be like, wow, like high performance surfing's come so far? Yeah,
definitely. There's some clips that I'm embarrassed when I watch them, back, like that I used it. Usually the ones that hold up are the ones that have a good style to it, because sometimes if you're pushing the performance, your style gets a little janky to do it, to really sort of learn how to get above your board, or there's something, or lay back to it, or something that's a little bit weird with it. And so those ones really don't hold up the test of time. When someone does a air reverse, but they're really like arms are flailing everywhere. And it might have been like the second air reverse, but when you see it in context, they look pretty bad.
I mean, and it's funny, I think I'm going to screw this quote up, but I think Parka recently commented on one of Taylor Knox's like recent web clips and said something to the effect of, if Taylor Knox had unlimited speed, he would be the best surfer in the world today at his age. He'd be the best surfer in the world, agnostic of how old he is, sort of.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Taylor he has so much power and speed, and when he's on, the way he links it is amazing. And he's one of those guys that you asked about hierarchy. His carves held up to someone else's airs in a different section. So for me, I didn't really have that hierarchy. It was more of like, is that a big turn? And it could be a carve or an air. There's definitely some airs that are revolutionary or showstoppers that change that dynamics. But I'm thinking of Knox had a couple of those, as well as in carve spaces on huge waves that in focus. I think it was at Cave Rock where he was doing some big ones.
We talked a little bit about you sitting in that arbiter space of just really just having a ton of visibility on the cutting edge of surfing for so long. Outside of the film space, did you ever have like coaches or brands come to you and say, hey, what do you think of this kid? Do you think this kid's going to be a world champ? Or any sort of, I guess, just sort of scout report. Did anyone kind of come to you with that at all?
Yeah, like some of the brands would really pitch their up and coming new signing, and we would throw them on trips and just see how they hung with the crew and how they performed under pressure. Because It's really a pressure game. There's a lot of people that just couldn't handle shooting with the microscope on them. And so, the current one that sort of like took a while to surpass that was like Craig Anderson. Like we'd go on trips and he would not really blow up, but then if he had his own filmer and he was doing it on his own, he would get amazing clips. And he's since surpassed that. But for the longest time, that was an issue that he wouldn't be able to get it on the spot. And so that we would put that microscope on a lot of these young kids coming up. And I think when we filmed with Jordy, he wasn't signed yet to anybody, and he was one of those guys that was sort of just hyped, and he delivered clips like the best of them,
right.
Rapid fire.
I actually think this heat in the water is a kind of a good like case study of that a little bit, because like Julian under a microscope probably since he was about 11, and justifiably like an amazing surfer and has been for a long time. And we were talking about this the other week, and I vividly remember the year that Italo qualified. It was kind of the Brazilian storm was happening. There were a lot of Brazilians on tour, and he got in on the qualifying series. And I remember looking at the name and I'm like, oh yeah, there's so much talent out of Brazil coming on. I had no idea who he was. And then I remember seeing an edit that he put out from like Rocky Lefts. I'm like, wow, that guy's got a ton of pop. Like he just seems like something else. But it's crazy because we look back now and it's like I wouldn't have pegged him even after that clip as like he's going to be a contender in a couple of years, which is probably a bias on my part. But I wonder, at this point, it's 2015. If you had to make a sort of spot analysis of Julian and Italo, what would be your predictions for both of them? Did you see kind of a world title for either of them? Do you still see one for Julian?
Back then, I remember that we were doing a fantasy surfer thing, and Jack Johnson put Italo on his team because he scoured the web and found Italo surfing his home break, that little right.
Oh yeah. The Natal Coast, yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, so he saw that footage and knew he'd do good at snapper, and so like put him on his team from that. So, but I didn't see it coming before this event. I didn't know who he was. Going to your second question on like Julian winning a world title, I think obviously his talent's there, and he could definitely do it. He performs great in all those events, but I think that for some reason he seems to get in his own way, and it reminds me a lot of like even Taylor Knox, who wasn't that same level of ending the results, but the performance was always there. But there's just always something that was just blocking it, and I just think it's maybe emotions, the way he approaches heats is maybe too emotional and stubborn, and not what I like about Italo and Gabriel and even John of late is as the heat progresses, you just see their energy level increase and they start moving around like sort of a shark in a feeding frenzy. And it's rare that I see that with Julian. It's
right.
Almost like he sits the course and just waits. And if it comes, it comes. And the year that Parko won his world title, I remember he was like sort of like in that same sort of like moving around and sort of like had like a frenetic energy if there was no waves as the heat went on. So I guess until I see Julian do that, I don't really I wouldn't put him on my team.
Yeah, a little bit of mongrel. Well, it sounds like you watch a lot of the webcasts. Is that right?
Yeah, I watch it. I love it. It reminds. I just like seeing the performances and I'm a fan of all the guys, especially the top guys. I think Gabriel gets a bad rap a lot. I've met him and I think he's a cool guy. And so I think he reminds me of Mick Fanning when Mick Fanning was on tour in the early days, where he really wouldn't bring any personality to his interviews, and he would just sort of like show up and like punch the card at work and leave and save his personality for off-site. I think Gabby has that side, and people haven't really gravitated towards him. But as far as the performance, all of it, I like it. The entertainment level is great.
Yeah. Oh, he's one of those first ledges for Julian. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a keeper, that wave right there.
I think that one came in at like a 9-something.
Yeah, so
9.43.
Yeah, that was like the only keeper I saw so far this heat, but that was a keeper. So that was great.
You mentioned something interesting when you were talking about Craig Anderson and just the pressure of having to perform in certain situations and just feeling more comfortable in other situations. And it reminds me of this conversation John and I were having a little bit about, and it pertains to Julian and Italo, I guess, just about the hype machine, you know, in the media and the industry, and like how much that can like level up the expectations to almost an insurmountable level for you to perform, especially when you're young, as opposed to the benefit of maybe coming in under the radar and you know, overachieving in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like I think that's a huge thing, especially nowadays with how much spotlight every event has with the live audience, but more so the online audience. It's a big pressure cooker. And I think you know, like Ethan Ewing, you know, like he surfed amazing in the first contest, but didn't get a follow-up wave and lost early.
Yeah.
And, you know, like he never recovered from that. And it's like that little bit of confidence for those guys just coming on tour early on just compounds itself. And yeah, so I think the pressure is massive in this spotlight now. It's like basically shooting for a part with the whole world watching.
Yeah, geez. Ethan, I'm glad you brought him up. He was one of those guys that even now, like the edits he's putting out are so good. And they're just like probably him at home on North Stradbroke. But like his style and it's so good and he's so fast and he's so strong. He was someone I was really looking forward to seeing how he did on tour this year.
Yeah, you know, like I think it's really important for Ethan and a lot of the rookies, but especially Ethan, to get a good result in the first couple of contests. I think if he doesn't, he could fall back in that same sort of self-doubt. And so I think it's important that he just really does what he did to finish the year and even start the year at Manly, and just really like attack it and go to his strengths.
We, you know, a couple of weeks ago, the WSL announced some directional changes to the tours starting in 2021. One of those is there's going to be a world title event, a single day event that determines the world champ, and it's going to be the title contenders surfing against each other, and the winner of that event, having performed in the water, will win the world title. What are your thoughts on that compared to? I mean, it's a pretty big departure from what we've done, but I guess it replicates a little bit how Italo and Gabriel went head to head in the final heat of 2019. Yeah,
you know, like I think it's an interesting concept, and I really like it. I wish that, you know, like Pipe's the perfect place to end the contest in the year, but like I just wish it was like at like Macaroni's or even Kramis, and just so you could see the performance, have it a performance space, because barrels, there's just a lot of X factor with it. But that's one of those things where, you know, going back to the question about Julian, if he's in the top 6 or top 5 or whoever the cutoff is, he could easily sweep that day and win the title. So yeah, that's a different sort of thing for him, where I could see a better chance in that capacity.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think like Pipe definitely should be a part of the tour. But I like the idea of having like, I think at Pipe or at Chopes, or a lot of times like the ocean really decides, you know, you're just on that monster wave, and because you're so good, you're going to get your 10. And that a wave like Macaroni's or any number of high performance waves out there, it really comes down to performance. And it's interesting. Like, I think if you look at like both the guys and the girls, agnostic of the venue, you look at kind of those top 5, top 10, top 15, every one of them is surfing at such a high level and is so alpha. Probably any of them believe that on any given day they can run the table and take it down. So I mean, I'm not saying this because they pay me, but I am excited to see it happen anyway.
I'm excited too. I actually hope Kelly makes the top 5 for that, and so he could get a shot at it.
I think Kelly, he's like Lestat the vampire in Interview with the Vampire. He's just gotten a bit of a taste, and he's like, oh, yeah, no, I can do it. Like,
especially if it's at Pipe and he's in the top 5, like I would give him as much of a shot as anybody. But maybe they need to have the second to last contest at Pipe. And the second to last contest for the girls in Maui, and then switch for the last one.
That'd be interesting.
I don't know.
I mean, but even Kelly, like, I mean, he is not human, obviously. It's like kind of the Michael Jordan documentary quote about him. But I mean, even the stuff he's been putting him out from Duranbah and Palm Beach or wherever the hell he's surfing in Australia right now, like his small wave game looks unbelievable right now. Like he just looks like he's fit and he's loose and he's just surfing so sharp.
Yeah, like what he did at the Olympic trials in Chiba. He made like the semis or the I don't know. They had a weird sort of seating thing, but he went really far in the event. It was like showing up under pressured heats against like all the best known beach break guys and really holding his own. So I think Florida comes into play with that. I think it gets overlooked because the waves are so good nowadays of his strengths and bad waves. But he favors like that sort of like weird waves and adjusting to weird situations is sort of his strengths nowadays. Besides,
have you been watching The Last Dance on ESPN?
Yeah. Kelly was the Jordan of our group, but like what was very similar is like how Jordan elevated everybody else and really like pushed everybody on his team to be better, and that same sort of energy was with Rob and Shane and Ross and all that and Knox.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching it. It's a very, very good, obviously, and you have a more of a personal relationship with Kelly than I do. Mine's mostly professional, but I feel like watching it has unlocked a lot of insights in my head about Kelly, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, this all maps really well. Like, and what you said is totally right. Like, just him continuing to elevate people around him in a big way. And I know we saw a side shot of Taj, who I think was coming up in the next quarter after this one. Taj is one of those guys that probably elevated Kelly, and Kelly elevated him, and he's a guy that you got to work with specifically on one of his projects, right?
Yeah. Taj was, we worked with Trilogy with him, and that was with Parko and Andy and Taj. And Taj, I think at the end of the day, had probably 3 times the footage of both the guys combined, because he just was like, loved videoing and worked hard at it, where like Parko's so used to just getting clips showing up at Snapper. And then Andy was, he was really motivated when it was like Big Karamis or some of these other spots or Desert Point, but not really, groveling it out in like the beach breaks or doing that stuff for clips, so where Taj was just, motivated always.
It's funny too, because I'm sure that's a pretty common trajectory with guys in terms of their enthusiasm to grovel it out and sort of less than sort of, Greek god Olympus level conditions. Is there anyone in addition to Taj that you kind of felt maintained that enthusiasm and froth for just getting clips all the time, even as they kind of got a little older?
Kelly's still that way. Like Kelly's still trying to get clips. I would say all the momentum guys, they're if like we were like going to shoot something for a project, they'd all be like trying to do it all day long. I would say the next generation wasn't as much. It's like almost every other generation would come back into excitement and so skip a generation. But yeah, like I'm just trying to think of some guys that are a little bit more relevant that would be pretty fired up. It just depended on the project, but Taj was the one that sort of stands out that really wants to shoot a lot of stuff. He would just, it was nonstop. And I think Andy and Parko pulled me aside and just said, hey, you got to lose some of this footage and, not have it so overbalanced with Taj clips.
Well, we're winding down on this heat. Do you have any surf projects in the mix now or on the whiteboard or anything? And with someone like either of these guys, but I guess Italo, considering he's a world champ and how much he's developed since then, is he someone that you would consider working with on anything?
Like I feel like the Brazilian crew right now reminds me so much of the Momentum crew, and where they're all sort of not staying together, but all like united, and they're pushing each other and like more competitive with each other than they are anybody else. And so like for me, like I would love if somebody makes it, not me, but somebody makes like a Momentum equivalent nowadays with all the young guys and just really like showcase Italo and Gabby and Philippe in like waves that are on tour. I think the big thing is seeing them in different kinds of waves. But yeah, as far as projects that I'm working on, the only thing close to surf is I'm working on a Nat Geo film with Mick Fanning and him sort of understanding what's going on with sharks So that's
he mentioned that, and what's the timing on that? Like in terms of where is the project in terms of completion, and when can we expect to see it?
We're doing the final like audio edits now. The edits done, and it's just audio and coloring. So as far as when it's released, like it's who knows nowadays, because there was going to be film festivals involved,
of course, yeah.
and now it might go straight to TV. So I don't know, but it'll be this year.
Cool.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there and then watch more videos over there, and then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.